GM Adrian, good
GM.
morning. Are you excited?
Yeah, huge day.
Huge day.
We get
Huge day.
DWR.
We have DWR coming on like in about 50 seconds. So let's get to it. I'm going to throw up the intro. We'll be back in 40 seconds, and then we're bringing up Dan Romero. So go look for us on Twitter, on YouTube, and let's get and retweet all our things. All right, see you in a minute. Welcome to GM Farcaster, bringing you everything from breaking news to spicy memes to the deep lore shaping this vibrant digital community. More than just a show, GM Farcaster is your digital third space where the community connects, the stories unfold, and the culture thrives. Whether you're a daily caster or just dropping by, we've got the latest buzz to keep you plugged in. So grab your coffee and let's dive in with your hosts, Nanish Prop and Adrian, for another episode of GM Farcaster. GM Farcaster. It is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. And you are here with Nanish Prop and Adrian for 29 minutes of Farcaster news to start your day. But before that, we're going to bring on up Dan Romero. Welcome, Dan. Welcome back, yeah. I should say. Welcome back.
Glad to be back.
Excited to have you here, but you're coming to us from the new booth.
Yeah, this is the call booth.
The call booth. Exciting. It's very big. We need some decor in the background.
Call booth. But we need to get a rug because now everyone downstairs can still hear me, especially because I'm really loud.
And some artwork.
Artwork.
It's
We need a little something.
Plant, maybe a plant.
Yeah. A plant or two, some artwork. Get Ted on that. We need something in the background. I mean, you've got incredible Farcaster artists. I think they could come through with some cool things for sure. So we're excited to have you here, Adrian. Where do you want to start? Where should we start? What do you want to ask first? Where do we want to start? There's so much happening.
I know, Dan. I was saying earlier in the year, I'm like, come on once a month and keep us updated. I think it's been 2 months. I think it was like pre-Linda, Ted, Woj, Slope joining.
We did the live one in East Denver. So
that's true.
Yeah,
we did the live one with Ted at East Denver for like a few minutes. Yeah, that's true. But that was the last time we saw you.
I was just asking my husband about his Twitter algorithm. I'm like, are you seeing anything about Farcaster on your Twitter? Because I go on Twitter and it's like literally every post is people joining Farcaster. So I'm like, this is either my own little siloed niche and it's not really happening, or like, is there a wave? What's happening?
What are you seeing?
Yeah. Well, how does it feel? Oh.
Well, so I think we've upped our game in terms of big quotes marketing on Twitter. We have a social media intern running the Farcaster XYZ Twitter account. It's gotten some Yeah, we have an intern.
Yes.
But I think we've gotten some good feedback that the account is appropriately kind of Gen Z coded, or I guess social media intern coded.
Yeah,
it's got its own vibe. Propagating the memes, just kind of mixing it up. But I think that there's just a general, when you have compounding progress, and we've increased the size of our team by 50%, so now we're actually doing even more stuff. That bleeds out. People, especially in a bear market, are like, well, is there anything positive happening? And to have kind of weekly progress happening over on Farcaster, it's kind of that Squidward SpongeBob meme where people are kind of looking through the window being like, what are they doing over there? Why are they having fun? Why are they tipping each other? I think that is the single biggest thing to kind of grow a social network. I think there's a lot of opinions on Farcaster as to what we should be doing. But the reality is that if you just look at every social network, with maybe the exception of TikTok, which we could talk about, they all grow just through word of mouth. Like ultimately the people on the social network convince other people to join because it's fun or great, right? Not all apps are like that. There are other apps out there, like Uber is a completely different growth. But I think with social network, the people is the product in terms of like why people want to come and why they want to stay. And I think that has been working pretty well for us. I think we have a long ways to go, right? Like, I don't think we've really unlocked a lot of sign up growth in the scheme of things. I think we've done a lot of reactivations, and Ted has been doing a ton of, kind of in the trenches, hand-to-hand combat type stuff, onboarding journalists, onboarding different on-chain ecosystems. Crypto the Game obviously was like a really great buy-in and a really great reactivation, but I don't think we've found that kind of like one growth vector, and we're going to keep looking for that. That's our job.
I loved the Crypto the Game moment, where it was really funny because Oxen had said right before it started, oh, it's going to be really quiet around here during Crypto the Game. Good time to get on the rewards leaderboard. And I'm like, I don't think so this time. And it wasn't at all. It definitely kind of took over the feed in the best way. It was so fun. So it was great to see that kind of happen, and then see Dylan recognize and even write about like that shift. And I think those kind of moments are amazing use cases for channels. And the fact that you guys were boosting that, I think, was helpful too. So I'd love to see more of that during those kind of, when there's a moment, when there's something happening that could get a little more attention, that's also going to drive new users or reactivate people too. I think it's great. So in other words, when cast out happens, love to see the same thing.
We're happy to do that from the cast out channel and do the same thing that we did. So
I'd love to see we need a Merkle team. We need a Merkle tribe playing. We'll see if we can get some of them play. They may not
be able to get one or two. But yeah.
They may not have
we got a lot of like stuff we're pretty heads down on right now.
Dylan's gonna play, by the way.
So cast out Dan is one of the best ways to pressure test frames.
Actually. We've had a lot of load testing that happened and breaking things during cast out. So
nice.
as Horsefacts can attest, we broke Yoink a couple times in a couple different ways. What are you looking forward to in the next couple months? Even, I know we've got FarCon coming up, Coinbase wallet activation soonish. Like, what are you kind of heads down thinking about and preparing for in terms of that?
Yeah, so obviously FarCon coming up, that's going to be an amazing opportunity to see a bunch of people in person. And I think, there's a couple of days worth of events. Not everything is just at the main thing on Friday. I think, so there are going to be opportunities. The whole team from Merkle will be in town for a few days. I think we're also doing something on Saturday too, just in case people who are in town or didn't get a chance to go. So I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities to kind of connect with other people on Farcaster in person, which is great. And I think URL to IRL still very much is a powerful component of what makes us a little different, right? Like, it's interesting. Like Blue Sky had a conference, I think. They have 30 million, 34 million users. They had 150 people show up. Like, we have, so like in terms of the density of the core part of the network and people who actually want to hang out, I think like Farcaster does really, really well relative to our size. But I think the just like opportunity to kind of see everyone once a year, like I think has a ripple effect in terms of just like the kind of long-term vibe and retention of the network, which I think is really important. That said, I think we have three kind of main priorities for like what we're working on. And the first is we're improving mini apps and kind of like crypto UX, which includes wallet. That's like the most people on our team. That's what we're heads down on. And the idea is that that's the differentiating thing for us, which I actually think if you go back to what we talked about last FarCon, it's like grow with crypto, create cozy corners, developer Legos. I think those roughly mean the same thing. I think cozy corners might be the one where we've had to change it a bit, but like to go through that, grow with crypto, that is mini apps, that is wallet, making that just like a better experience. You probably saw we have the minimized mini apps.
Yes, love.
You could actually have a live stream that is running on kind of the app while you're kind of browsing. So like all of that stuff is brand new. We're going to continue to improve that UX. I think that the second priority is, you call it like the social pod of teams or people on the team. And that is very much focused on growth, and specifically onboarding a new user experience is where we're spending a lot of time. And so the big thing that's going to happen here, unlocked actually by Snapchain in the background, but is we're optimistic that we can significantly reduce the cost of signups, which just allows two things. One, we can make that signup experience feel more like a Web2 social app, which I think is actually important, right? It's like 50% of people hit the payment screen and they don't move forward. So you're effectively doubling growth, more or less, if you don't have to pay. And then I think a second component of that is there are a lot of apps in crypto that have a bunch of existing users that when they think about paying $2 per user, they're going to be like, that's just not feasible. Whereas in a world where you're kind of at a tenth of that, 20 cents a user, for example, or even cheaper, people might just say, hey, okay, you know what? I'm going to take my existing user base and kind of like seamlessly in place, add an FID for all of them. And now they can participate on the network. And that's actually something that we are figuring out with Base. And a lot of the heavy lifting and kind of like solving the edge cases and technical stuff at the protocol level that we do for Base to kind of get the protocol ready for an app that has, on the order of, millions of monthly active users, right? So like an order of magnitude larger than where Farcaster is today. I think that will be a great case study. And you could see other apps that have their existing user bases kind of consider to, integrate Farcaster at some level. And then the last one is just, there's a bunch of stuff that's happening behind the scenes on the protocol, right? Snapchain's like a huge upgrade to just like the scalability of the protocol. I don't know if you guys remember last year, like Supercast, Woj was like having a lot of frustration of like, he was behind the network. And a lot of that was just, he grew so fast and so much, the system we had put in place just wasn't keeping up. And so Snapchain is a significant upgrade to everything. And we're optimistic that can give us, pretty significant headroom to scale and then enable things where we can actually lower the cost of signups, knowing that when you do lower the cost of signups, you're going to have more kind of like spammy type users signing up. You're going to have good users too, but like, I think that like, that's one of the considerations is like, you just don't want to open up the floodgates and then have the network get overwhelmed. And so having that kind of scalable, like foundational infrastructure in place, it's not something that an everyday person on Farcaster sees,
right?
But like, you're going to feel it in the sense that the network will just work. Other apps will work. That is like foundational. So getting that right. So those are the things that I'm most
you feel it when it doesn't work. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. We remember.
Dan, and kind of an engineering question about protocol and kind of hubs to Snapchain and I think I know the answer, but I want to hear what you say, is solving for distributed system social network at a protocol level. Is that a solved problem?
No, because I think that like no one has done this actually at sufficient scale. I mean, you just look at the major social networks, they're many orders of magnitude larger in terms of just like daily active users than where Farcaster is. And if you look at the architecture of all of the kind of decentralized social, we're the only one that is kind of approaching it more like a blockchain. So this idea of like global state, like there is no kind of like walled garden of data. Whereas contrast to some of the other networks like an AT Proto, Blue Sky, or Mastodon, Fediverse type thing, they're federated, which is like permissive, but like there's a lot of like at scale questions around like, how do I get access to all the data so that I can like run an app? Like, can you cut me off? Like there's like a bunch of architectural decisions that allow them to scale very well right now. But then at some level of scale, do you run into like the email oligopoly problem where if you've ever tried to boot up a new domain and send emails from, like if Amazon and Google don't trust your domain and there's really no way to kind of like make it work, you go to spam. And it's like this like whole opaque process to kind of make that work. That effectively will happen, in my view, at any sufficient scale with any federated system, just because like it is actually economically not feasible by that design to just like have like super permissive open APIs. And then there's like kind of this weird incentive. Whereas I think with Farcaster, one of the constraints we've said is like you have to have the data be available in the same way that it is available on a blockchain, which there are a lot of hard engineering problems to solve for there. But if we do it, like, I mean, just look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, like that does work at sufficient scale. both in terms of data, number of people who can connect to it and stuff like that. And so I think we are making a lot of progress there, but like to get to a world where you have hundreds of millions of daily active users on a distributed system like Farcaster, I think there's still some pretty gnarly computer science level problems to solve in the future.
All right, cool. And there were some questions about like with the Coinbase wallet integration and assuming that that will scale up signups. Are we ready for that with Snapchain, or will we be?
Yeah, so we'll be ready. I think there's like a combination of like, think about it as like signups themselves are actually not that stressful in the scheme of things.
Yeah,
it's signed up users who are using the kind of like
who are actually using it.
Yeah, we don't have like block space in the sense of like a blockchain,
right.
But like you can effectively think of it as like there's only so much storage on Snapchain at any given point. Like you can increase that, but it creates more complexity for the system. There's only so much bandwidth. There's only so much like, literally the like read write of like every cast, every reaction coming into it, like an actual server, right? Like that is like TPS is the way people think about like blockchain, and like Solana's like big thing is like they want to get to some crazy number of TPS. But I think with Farcaster, we're confident that Snapchain can handle about 1,000 TPS, which is like, okay. And then I think like there's headroom to get to probably somewhere on the order of like 9,000 with the existing architecture and system. And then there are other scaling techniques there, but like that's a lot of activity on the network relative to where we are today, which I actually don't.
Yeah, I liked it when V said, this will help us go between 10 and 100x. I'm like, that's a kind of a big range. I'm like, where exactly?
Yeah, I think it's hard because you don't know
Hard
how
to
the
know.
systems play out, like the shape of the behavior.
Yeah.
It's everyone has it's like Mike Tyson. It's like everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. It's like
True.
everyone has an idea of scalability until like people actually start using the system, and then like you get weird usage patterns.
Low testing.
Oh, I didn't actually think people would do this. Right? So.
We didn't know you were going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a couple other questions that came from casts that are out there. Linda had casted, what do you believe is the single highest impact thing that the Warpcast team could do or build to grow mini apps? Lots of interesting answers here. What did you take from some of those replies, or what are you all thinking about in terms of that?
Yeah. So I think that we ask those types of questions all the time just to kind of like gut check of like what we're thinking. And you can think of it as like there's a combination of we live and use the app every day, right? Like I'm a pretty active user, right? So beyond just like mini apps, just like any feedback. Then there's the stuff that we have surfaced in the past, like anecdotes via like a DM or a cast or a bug report or stuff that, we're annoyed with. And then those kind of casts are always useful because it can just like surface up a chance of like something that we might have missed, or like, something that gets a ton of engagement. It's like, maybe we should like kind of double click, send a follow-up message, etc. I think with mini apps, if I was to kind of like look at that, there are some tactical things that are improvement, but if I was just to kind of like stack rank what's the most important thing, it's docs have been like a thing that we just like have never really invested in and been great at. And I think we're at a stage where we're getting a lot of feedback from developers in the ecosystem. Like users is the thing that they want more than anything else. But if you were to ask the second thing, it's like this idea of like stability, which everyone has a different definition for that. But ultimately, I think that is like commit to like actually having really solid docs. When you change things, like make sure that that's clear, like an easy place to find that. And then I actually think that there's a big aspect of like, we've done a lot of talking to new developers in the ecosystem. Having Linda on the team has been phenomenal for that. You see someone saying like, oh, I'm launching this thing on chain on Twitter. You can slide into their DMs on Twitter being like, hey, have you thought about doing that as a mini app?
I just did that. I just did that yesterday with somebody who was launching something. Yeah, exactly.
What is the actual URL that you're sending to that person? Because I think like mini apps to Farcaster to XYZ is like pretty good relative to where we were. But honestly, it's still a little bit like there's a lot going on there. And it's like, well, like what is the single artifact that you send to someone that clicks? Like, why mini apps? So the stuff that Linda's doing in terms of this video content, but also like within kind of a 30-second or 60-second overview, you can understand like what is a mini app? What is the opportunity? Like how many total users are there? Like how many funded wallets? Like what kind of transactions can I expect? This idea of like get to your first 1,000 users. That I think is like nailing that. And so again, to put the big scare quotes of marketing, it's product marketing for a developer platform, right?
Right.
It's like, what is this thing? Why should I care? And how much work does it take in order to get the benefit? Like, and making that as clear as possible is, I think, like a big priority for us. And then there's all these just like little paper cuts. Actually, one thing, Varun built a mini app last week. I don't know if he's planning to release it, but like he actually sat down for 2 days. I think he was like 3 feet away from me, but like went through our own docs, you know, and he's like familiar enough, but like can shift to a mode of like, pretend that I don't know anything about this ecosystem, like read this through the lens of like, you know, kind of a new incoming person. And so as a result of that, like we had just have like a zillion little improvements and like copy edit changes that like help understand concepts. And actually one of the reasons we changed from frames to mini apps, Linda talking about people that just like, what's a frame? Like, I don't know. And then the people who knew what a frame was, but haven't been in the ecosystem, they're thinking of frames as the V1, whereas V2 is akin to Telegram. And I think like, it's just like you, as much as frames is like good branding for Farcaster, I'm partial to that because it's there. It's just like, make the hard decision, move to mini apps, just simplify and keep going.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense.
And are you, the way you describe the docs you're working on, which is really kind of on the marketing side, it's the what, the why. Are you focusing on the how? Like if you have like how to quickly convert, you have an existing app, how do you turn that into a frame? Here's like kind of almost like in the tutorial, here are like the quick Hello World style apps.
Yes. So 2 things here. One, we've actually on this passive docs, we actually put an LLM text file, like which is like kind of in vogue right now, so that you can drop this into Cursor or, you know, Claude Code or whatever you're doing. That actually like helps a lot for people in the sense that a lot of people's like first way of like building now is like, I don't need to read your docs, like just let my AI read them for me and get started. I think the second thing, and this has been a big hobby horse of mine, is HorseFacts actually did a YouTube video. And again, this is a little bit of packaging in terms of like, we could feature this better. When we launched V2 in December, where live coding on a like YouTube video in less than 10 minutes, he was able to convert Uniswap, which has an open source app, to a frame or, you know, now mini app. I think that as an artifact, going back to this idea of like, what is the one thing you share with people? There's two types. There's the person who's getting started on an idea that you probably want to show. It's like, get up and running really fast with your idea, prototype, and like, great. And then there's another thing where, hey, I built this crypto website, this mint site, this like whatever, base paint, like pick your favorite. How can I go from website to mini app in the least amount of time possible, which actually it's not that much work, but like we have to explain the core concepts, like what are you doing? And effectively you can think of it as just like taking your website and making it, you know, mobile optimized. In this case, it's mini app optimized. And so getting that nailed, I think, is a really core part of this like work.
I think it makes so much sense to, I had somebody yesterday telling me they're launching something in May. And by the way, Adrian, they're coming on. That's the thing I added to the calendar. And immediately I was like, well, you need a mini app for this. Like, it's obvious it's a game. It's a mint. You're minting an NFT, then you're playing a game. It's like, okay, well, that easily fit into a mini app. And so I've, you know, said, hey, you should talk to Linda, tagged him on that post. It just makes a lot of sense. So I think you're just going to see more and more of that. Like, of course, why wouldn't you have, you know, access to this audience in such an easy way? So especially if it's something you can just plug and play in 10 minutes, you know, that's a no-brainer.
To be super, like, I think like, you know, obviously Samuel has been giving feedback on this for a really long time. JC4P, like all the amazing frames,
incredible
now mini apps like created, and then feedback on like, hey, these are the paper cuts. Like I've you know, built dozen mini apps at this point. Like, here are the frustrating parts. Like, team is really trying to take that feedback and be like, how can we squash as many of these pain points and make it as easy as possible? And we're not out of the woods, but like, it is very much a priority for us, and we really appreciate the feedback.
I also wanted to touch on this sort of the growing Farconomy with rewards, then with tipping, and seeing how this is all sort of working together. This was Fungible talking about Farcaster gives me 10. I tip 10 Farcaster friends $1. I get $1 tips from 10 friends on Farcaster. I spend $10 buying things on Farcaster. And I see this playing out just myself in doing these things. And it's really interesting to now see more people talking about it on Twitter, talking about it in general, memeing it. And what are you seeing? What are you hearing? Is this going where you want it to go? Are there other ideas you have around sort of this sort of bar economy building, and how can we help with that?
Yeah, so I put out a cast in the fall. I think it was like Make Money, then Friends, and it was a little controversial, and I had a bunch of people, give me opinions and be like, I'm not here for the money, or like, I find that distasteful, or like, I'm only here for the money. I think the reality is Farcaster is a choose your own adventure. Like, you can come and use Farcaster as strictly and I think Woj actually had a good cast about this today, even this morning.
Yes, he did.
Where he basically is like,
I had it ready.
The version. It's like, you can be here. It's like strictly economic. Like, all the plumbing is there. All of these different things. You can be using Warp Slot every day, like participating in eggs, like hoping the rewards happen, get tips. Great. Okay, that's like the extreme. Like, you're only there for the money. And then the other person is like posting in a solo channel milady memes for like literally, like it's insane. Like the collection of memes is like, but like pick the version you want. And there's a lot of dials that you can do, like in terms of like, Flash, like if you don't like meme coins, just put a $sign in your mute button and you will literally never see a meme coin on Farcaster in your feed. Like, again, period. And here's the thing. The reveal preference of this is I don't actually think people want that, because they know that there's that one thing that maybe that they want to participate in.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, okay, so you've gone from like principled, I don't think that this is good, to, well, I don't want to completely remove my optionality.
Yep.
And so I think it's just like, it's an emergent new kind of social network. There's actually a really good clip. I think I shared it last night. Packy, who I've known for a really long time, and has been on Farcaster for a while, and then Alex Danko, who I've known for a while and is also on Farcaster. We're talking in a very long podcast that had nothing to do with Farcaster, brought up the fact that Farcaster is this like emergent behavior, weird kind of frontier of the internet where, you can talk about whatever's happening on like traditional social networks, but the reality is like you can just speed run things, and like all the stuff that happens on Farcaster, it's permissionless, it's programmable. Like, you can kind of do this. Everyone has a wallet, so you do get things like degen and Moxie and eggs, and then you have all these mini apps and waifu frame, like everything that kind of like pops up, right? And so I think for us, it's about kind of increasing the velocity of money is a thing that people talk about in the economy. I think that's actually a really important thing for Farcaster. And I think tips, the feature that kind of Woj worked on here, and Blockheim, in terms of, she's always doing all the design, but in terms of like the important thing to think about is if people get used to doing transactions daily in a kind of social way, right? And that social spectrum can have the non-speculative stuff, tips, like literally just sending a couple of dollars as kudos appreciation, or buying something like eggs, right? And then like playing that. But the point is that you're actually building a user base where you can have like actually daily transacting users, like in terms of like the social network. And that is unique. There is no other social network where you're, again, scale's not quite there, but at the same time, like the percentage of the kind of like core of the network that is transacting every single day and trying new things, that is the thing to make the bet on. And going back all the way to our priorities, mini apps and wallet is the differentiation for us. And so metas and weird social kind of things that come through, like the on-chain personality test is a great example. I think like, and one of the reasons we're actually pushing so hard on developer rewards that reward on-chain transactions is, to me, that's what make mini apps actually unique, is there's some on-chain component, whether it's you're paying the developer because you enjoyed the experience, or there's some collectible with it, or there's some other kind of mechanic with it. I think that is really critical. And then really tying onboarding to, you can kind of think of it as like, we have to get you in. So make it as easy as possible to sign up, get you a good feed, because I actually think that is the single biggest thing that's going to create some level of retention. And even if you churn and you come back 6 months later, that initial feed load that you open up based on that first time you signed up is actually pretty important. But once you have that, the next two things, we need to get you using mini apps to show you this differentiated stuff. And then we need to get money in your wallet. And so like those three things, it's like feed, or, sign up, feed, mini app, wallet. Like that is the mantra internally of like, how do we get every user through that?
And the mini apps can be the thing that makes it sticky for some people too. We know there's people who they started showing up every day because they're playing Farcade or Farville or whatever. And that makes a huge, huge difference. I know you have to go, but I have to ask you this because this was really funny. This is from Eric. This would have been a perfect weekend for a Moment of Zen episode. I miss it. Stares into the distance. Anytime, coming back anytime?
I'm here, right? I'm my budget for podcasting is 100% focused on Farcaster. I may come out of retirement at some point in my life for podcasting, but it probably isn't soon. I have
well, anytime.
3 kids under 4 and a startup.
I figured that was part of it.
So like, I really don't have much time.
I have to tell you though, I have used the Moz with Brian Armstrong in class. So that was an assignment for my students a couple of weeks ago, where they had to watch that and pull out 3 interesting things. And the thing that they commented most about was the fact that he got a tutor for biology. And they thought that was like so interesting that somebody at that level would still be learning new things in that way. And I was like, see?
I think it's actually more common than you'd think. Like my wife actually, not billionaire Brian Armstrong, but like, I think she was starting to kind of get interested in nuclear. She was between jobs. She found a physics grad student, which by the way, like grad students, they don't need that much money to do something. And really, really nice person, and basically helped tutor her some like kind of physics stuff oriented towards nuclear and nuclear engineering. And then she ended up starting a nuclear company with a, kind of like someone who's deeper in that space. But like, I think it's like a very underrated thing. I do think AI is probably going to like basically make it so that everyone can have that, which is great. Like then it's like, it'll cost you $20 a month in a ChatGPT subscription. But the idea of like, and obviously you're a professor, so you probably appreciate this, but like, most people stop going to school. Yeah. And then like, they never interact with like another professional person. Maybe you have like a tennis coach or something but like the reality is like coaching is great. Like, you actually get better, a lot better faster because someone who knows what they're talking about is critiquing and giving you advice.
I think the lifelong learning thing is what I really tagged into that too. It's like, this is important. And I loved that the students picked up on that. And I think that was a huge lesson for them. I know you have to go. Adrian, anything else last minute? Quick.
When is Warpcast turning into Farcaster?
Good question.
So I don't think we've made a decision there, and I think we still kind of do it as an FIP and walk through it. I think we wanted to kind of put the trial balloon out there and just kind of see opinions. I think generally, I would say most people who are building in the ecosystem focused on like growing users, anything that simplifies and like makes it easier for people to onboard, and all of the kind of like interviews we've done a month in on some of these creators that I'm with Ted, so they're all super confused still about Warpcast and Farcaster. So like you can say all you want about decentralization and principles and whatever. I think the reality is it's extremely confusing for normal people, and we need more normal people to sign up for Farcaster and use Farcaster in order to make the thing valuable. That said, I think like we want to kind of think through all the pieces and then get input. As despite popular belief, we do actually seek input from people when we are kind of thinking about big decisions.
We see it. All right. We know you have to go. We will see you at FarCon. We'll be up in the little media space. Come visit us and we'll chat then.
See ya.
Yes.
All right.